Am I adulting good?
I just don't know what I'm doing. I can't breathe.
I feel so anxious.
This is what it's all about.
I just don't know what I'm doing. I can't breathe.
This is what life's all about. I just don't know what I'm doing. Oh, what's going on?
I don't understand.
Welcome to the Am I Adulting Good podcast, where we talk about all things self-help and the reality behind trying to adult to our best ability in this world. We're your hosts, Brianna, Kriss,
And I'm Caroline Savransky.
and we are both in community mental health, so we've seen some pretty interesting things.
Deciding to take on the journey of self-betterment is daunting and hard. Let's make the mistakes together and share what does and does not work. Because hey, are any of us doing anything right? And if we are, how would we even know?
We will cover a variety of topics like the old self-sabotage, toxic relationships, finding yourself after a breakup, or perfectionism. Special guests will be invited for most episodes to share their experiences and wisdom.
This podcast is aimed at anyone and everyone who needs a little bit of help getting their shit together and wants some company in doing so. We're in it for the laughs, but if we can learn something on the way, then that's good too.
Am I adulting good?
Thanks, everyone, for joining another episode of Am I Adulting Good? Today we have a special guest, Stephanie Saralidis, who, by the way, is a bit of a type A personality. So if you hear her cooking in the background, it's because she constantly has to be doing two things at once. But thank you so much for being on board.
That's okay. Thank you for having me.
Steffi,
I think.
you should be confused. It's we are start off by asking all our guests, what does adulting mean to you?
Oh, constantly being tired, lots of bills, and just never feeling like you're ever refreshed or replenished. It's fun.
That's the most depressing answer we've ever had.
Have you
Well,
ever
it's fine.
have you ever tried to not do two things at the same time?
Nah.
Might contribute to the tiredness.
Yeah, but there's not enough hours in the day when you're an adult to do everything. So I try to maximize on opportunity. I like to think myself as an opportunist.
You could try being more like me and just disappointing everyone around you. Like,
I could. You're right. Maybe I'll get some tips after this session.
yeah,
Caroline just leaks disappointment. It's great.
I really should be doing something, but I'm sleeping and not answering my phone. Anyway,
You're right. Like I constantly feel like I'm disappointing myself, so why not disappoint everyone else around me anyway?
exactly.
Yeah. And just for the listeners, we've known Steffi basically all our lives. So it's been really nice to have her around today. Let's hope. We'll see how it goes. No promises. But for today's topic, it is something that definitely hits close to home with Steffi, and it is centered around the expectations on women to have kids.
Yeah. So I know we started off on a bit of a pessimistic note with this Zoom call, so we're about to get more pessimistic.
Please
Negative.
tell us, I can't wait. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and why you hate babies. No, I'm joking. You love babies. Tell us a bit about yourself and then we can get into sort of...
No, it's not wrong.
By the way, guys, Steffi is currently pregnant.
Yeah. Currently 7 and a bit months pregnant.
I'm so sorry.
I don't know about you guys or your listeners, but I feel like there's this big expectation on women to want to have babies. And I'm at the point in my life where my husband really wanted babies years ago, and there was more things I wanted to do with my life and traveling, etc. before we got to this point. But because of COVID, we were kind of like, look, now's this time as good as any, and I don't think you're ever really ready to have babies. But I'm also not very good at feigning excitement, and I haven't really spoken much to people publicly about my pregnancy. So people close to me know about it, but at work, I think most people only found out 2 weeks ago when I was 6.5 months pregnant. And I didn't tell people. And most of the reason why I wasn't telling people is because people get so excited and I can't sustain or match the excitement that comes with it. And when I don't match the excitement, people can't reconcile that I'm not excited to have babies. And even before having kids, if people asked, oh, do you want to have babies? And you'd say not particularly, you'd be faced with the response of, oh, that's so selfish though.
Being on your page with babies, just being terrified of the idea of them, what do you think people get so excited about? Like, why do people get so amped up when someone's pregnant or having a child? It sounds terrifying to me.
I don't know. People, I mean, maybe it's, I was talking to someone about this the other day, and people are like, oh, it's such a great life experience and there's just so many great things that happen. But I find the life I live without babies to be quite fulfilling. So I wonder if it's something where people, maybe they feel a void in their life that would only be filled by babies, which mine is filled by dogs. So I've got 2. And maybe it's that void that they're feeling that they get excited about, but I don't have that baby void.
Yeah. I think it's very much ingrained in us to want to have kids and that be a natural progression of life, which, yes, I mean, as animals and genetically, and we have hormones that often kick in to make us want to have kids. But there's a great cost to having kids that I think people almost lie about to themselves, of not necessarily a sacrifice, but it does change your life a lot. So what were some of the reasons that was almost pushing you away from wanting the idea of kids?
Because I really like my life the way it is, and I've done a lot of work with kids growing up, like did lots of nannying, etc. I know how much work goes into kids. I think a lot of people who don't have kids get excited about them because they don't quite know how much work they'll be. But because I did lots of nannying growing up, I saw how much work it was, and it's a lot of time, a lot of resources, a lot of money, a lot of energy.
For what?
And people say it's rewarding, which is fine. I'm sure it must be at some point, but it's a lot of work for it to be rewarding. And this is going to sound really bad. I'm not at the point in my life yet where I understand the return on investment. I have stronger views about this, and I'm a little bit terrified to say on your podcast because I know that people won't agree with them.
I think we need to hear different people's views, because before speaking to you, every person that I've heard that is pregnant or has a baby is just this life-changing, miraculous thing. And it's just like they've never felt love like they love a child. And every excruciating moment of being awake for 48 hours is worth it. And there needs to be like an antithesis to that, where there is like people who are really, really, really freaking struggling. And I think it's healthy for people to hear that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm struggling with it. The one thing that people say a lot when I tell them that I'm not excited or if I say, look, I'm mainly having kids for my husband, he really wants to have kids. He's happy to do the primary caring stuff. It's just that I'm the only one that can physically have them. He could have the babies if he wanted. People often say like, oh, but you'll be a great mom. And I'm like, it's not about competency. It's about desire. And people can't understand that. They think that I'm terrified or that I'm worried I'll struggle or anything like that. It's not that. It's just that I like my life the way it is. And I think life is pretty good even without kids. Yeah. And even when people talk about their kids, it's not until you really tell someone you're pregnant that they're like, kids are the best, or if they're trying to convince you to have kids. But usually when you hear parents talk about their kids, it's about how tired they are, how much they've got to do, how sick their kid's been, how much work they've missed, or childcare, or how their weekends are taken up by kids' activities. Like you don't really, I don't know, like parents only seem to talk about how hard having kids is and complain about that. But then they're like, totally do it. Kids are the best. Like, it's the best thing I've ever done. Totally rewarding.
It's very mixed messages, right? Like, I've spoken to you about this, Steffi. Some people think that like having a baby is the hardest thing in the entire world that you can go through. And I think of like, what's something horrible? I don't know, going through cancer or something like that, going through chemotherapy and saying that's the worst thing I've ever gone through. And then going, you know what? I wouldn't mind doing that 2 or 3 times, because that's what having a baby is. It's like, this is the hardest thing I've ever done. And we're going for round 2.
Yeah.
Can't be that hard if you keep going at it.
Yeah, I mean, the population wouldn't be growing if it was that hard, first of all. Second of all, you wouldn't be trying to tell other people to do it if it was that hard. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. Or even, I think of it like having a drug addiction, because there's basically no benefits to drug addiction except for the time, the handful of times that it feels really good. But you don't hear people being like, oh my God, guys, ice is it. You've got to go and get on ice. Because having kids sounds like it's hard 90% of the time. There's like 10% of good.
So why would people have that second child? I mean, I've noticed a few times that people want to reconsolidate something in their relationship. So they think by having another child, it's going to bring them and their partners together, or to entertain the first child. Why do people keep back for more? And how do they sometimes get up to 8 kids?
First of all, sometimes it's religion, sometimes it's desire, sometimes it's like if you're in developing countries, lack of contraception. Even in first world countries, sometimes people just don't use contraception. I don't doubt that some people do want babies and thoroughly enjoy having kids and everything that comes with it. I'm just not one of those people. And it's hard for other women and adults to understand that maybe a woman who's early 30s doesn't want kids.
Yeah, it's definitely not. I think when I'm on the fence 50-50. Do I want kids? Don't I want kids? I haven't decided. I'm 31. People are like, look at me like, how are you not you're at the point where you really should know.
Yeah.
But you've got 3 sisters, Steffi. So have you ever spoken to your mum now that you've been pregnant and stuff?
Yeah.
Like, how did she handle raising 4 girls?
I was like, would you do it again? She was like, no.
She also didn't raise you. Your grandparents did.
Yeah, but I was like, how did you do this 4 times over in 3 years? And she's like, I would never recommend it to anyone.
But is she happy now that she's got 4 healthy, beautiful, grown women that she look after her into old age?
Yeah, but I'm sure it took her like 25. Well, this is the other thing. People are like, oh, but who's going to look after you in your old age? It's like, you could have a dud kid, you could have a drug addict or someone who ends up in prison, or you could have a kid who moves overseas. Like, there's no guarantee that you putting all your effort into raising your kid is going to have any payoff. And it's a pretty poor reason to have kids in the first place, is for someone to look after you in their old age. But no, I think like it would have taken her about 25 years to really get to the point where she was like, oh, thank God, I'm through the hardest parts. But that's 25 years of your life. How is that? I don't know.
A worthy trade-off.
I just feel like if you were in a relationship or in a job or in a friendship where the person treated you like your kids treat you and take as much from you and are often thankless about it, everyone would say leave. You know, they wouldn't tell you to keep pursuing or to have more or to continue doing that.
So you're saying it's basically an abusive relationship?
Emotionally.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can have a physically abusive kid, but yeah. Sorry. I know these are probably controversial and not many people would agree, and who knows, maybe when I have a kid I'll change my mind, but from this side of it, it feels like I just don't understand it.
It might come out of you and you're just going to go, oh my God, I am so in love. I've never been this in love in my life.
I also think you're speaking a language at the moment that a lot of people do actually relate to, and they feel so isolated in these thoughts and so much shame for thinking them because they can't express them. And it is so controversial to this expectation on women to have kids. So thank you so much for sharing, because I think it is a necessary opinion to be voiced.
Yeah. And that's another thing people have said, like you said, Kaz, who knows, like maybe when you hold it, you'll just be so in love with it. But what if I'm not? Like, is it not okay for women to just not be as ecstatic about having kids? Like, I feel like a lot of men, when their wives are pregnant, they're like, oh, mate, that's so exciting. And you excited? They're like, just having one for the wife. It's just, and that's okay. But a woman can't be like, oh, just having one for the husband.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, there is every chance in the world that you are going to pick up that baby and you're going to be exhausted and you are not going to be able to feel love. Well, I think we're talking about like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? Like, if you're not sleeping, if you're not eating, if you're in survival mode, it's very hard to feel love for another being, right? So it's like, it could be months before you get a proper night's sleep where you can even start to like feel love and emotions and gratitude and things like that, because you're in survival mode.
Well, thankfully, we have this funny little chemical called oxytocin that gets released. I mean, whoever designed the human body knows how difficult this can be. And so you get a massive surge of oxytocin when you give birth and when you breastfeed to force you to bond with your child. So hopefully there will still be a little bit of hope left in this not being the biggest mistake of your life. So that's not the biggest mistake of your life.
Is this not toxic positivity where everyone just tries to be like, oh, you'll love it, or, you know, everything will be fine, or you'll fall in love with it, or oxytocin will come in? Like, why not be like, yeah, having kids is really fucking tough, and it's really nice that you're doing that for your husband, and there's probably going to be a lot of hard times, and it's probably not going to be that great, but I'm sure there might be some good in it, rather than it being like, oh, you'll definitely fall in love with this.
You know what though? You're a really good wife. You must love your husband so much.
To be honest, I prefer getting my oxytocin from orgasm, not from me.
Seriously, or a good meal.
And traveling.
I don't think.
I mean, you only.
Dopamine. I don't think you bond with a meal.
Oh,
You should see my undies when I see something I really want to eat.
Miserable.
You know, when you're at like bachelorette parties or hens parties and you play those games where it's porn name or nail polish color, there should be one just of my faces that is like orgasm or food. See if people can tell the difference.
Speaking of orgasms, this is like just a way off question, but you hear these women having these transcendent experiences where they orgasm during labor. How far off fucking reality is childbirth to those women that are like, yes, I had multiple orgasms during childbirth. It was spiritual, it was magical, I reached God.
Yeah, I've read, I mean, haven't had experience yet, maybe ask me in 3 months' time. But in the books we're reading at the moment, preparing us for parenthood, they do talk about like all the different birthing experiences, and for some people it really is like this amazing unicorn sexual experience, but they were like, but for the majority of women it's really hard.
yeah, painful. Just, you know
Yeah.
what? Just ask them to give you an extra stitch to make something worthwhile.
The extra stitch.
Don't even need a stitch. Yeah, I don't need one. And he's just like, just stitch it up anyway, just see what you got, see what you can find.
Yeah.
It's like I didn't think that till birth.
I had a cesarean.
So how can people who don't want kids handle these types of situations? I mean, when they're kind of in this awkward state where, I mean, have you found ways that you can handle it other than being avoidant until you have to confront him?
I can't say I have, because it's quite a confronting topic for a lot of people. Like, I don't mind talking about it, but usually the recipient of who I'm talking to, I mean, I have to say my views might be quite extreme, so I don't know, but people can't seem to handle what I'm saying. Like, they can't make sense of it. A lot of times people are worried that I'm going to have PND afterwards, postnatal depression, because I'm not looking forward to it. And I'm like, no, I think I'm actually more realistic about how hard raising a child is than people who are like, it's going to be amazing, and then get into it and realize how much work it is. And then those people struggle because they were just not ready. I feel like I'm mentally very prepared for how hard it can be. And therefore, any of the good that comes with it is going to be a bonus, kind of going in with no expectations and getting at least something out of it.
I wouldn't say no expectations. I would
Low
say
expectations.
negative expectations.
It's going to be hard. Yeah.
Single positive thing happens, that's like you're already winning, because
Yeah.
you're planning for misery.
Yeah, exactly. So any good is good. Do you know what I mean? And it probably can't get worse than what I'm imagining it to be. So I feel like I'm in a good state to avoid any PND, because I'm already as negative as you probably could be about this.
What's the biggest thing you've mentally prepared yourself for? Like the biggest, misery or thing that you're expecting to be the worst?
Sleep deprivation.
Sleep. Yeah, sleep deprivation. What was it? We just had a guest on last week who was saying that 24 hours without sleep is the equivalent to 0.1 blood alcohol level. I mean, who wants to be that naturally drunk without having alcohol? I think that's awful. You don't even get to enjoy the alcohol to get to that state.
Yeah, because you're also, if I haven't slept for 24 hours, I would actually stab someone in the eyeball to get an hour nap. Like, I'm not.
Please don't have kids. I'm like, please.
I'm not a human being anymore. If I were to stay awake for 24 hours at my age and I wasn't allowed to sleep, I would just murder everyone around me.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
computer says no.
We're reading a book at the moment called So You're Gonna Be a Dad, which is actually a good book. It's not really about pregnancy. It's more how to prep yourself for the realities of having a kid, particularly for men. And the guy in it, like on his second kid, not even on his first kid, so the author, he talks about how people talk about how hard sleep deprivation is, and you hear about all these horrible things that happen when people are really tired. And he's like, it's nothing that you can understand until you're at that point. And he's like, it's not that you love your child any less, it's just that you are so tired that accidents can happen and that you just don't know how to control yourself anymore. But he was like, you've got, like, if you're getting to that point, you just got to put the baby either with someone else, or you've just got to remove yourself from the situation. Because he's like, he loves his kids and stuff, but sleep deprivation makes you a completely different person.
Makes you a monster. It can make you so psychotic, actually psychotic.
Yeah. Sleep deprivation psychosis like is a thing.
I actually think they should be almost personality testing people before giving them a license to have a kid.
Totally.
Yeah, I mean, you need like 1,000 times more practice and effort and money to get a driver's license than you do to get pregnant.
Even adopting a dog, like the impact of a child on society versus a dog on society, I'm just like, there's no means testing before having kids. And I know that's a human right and stuff, but there probably should be.
In fact, the government gives us money when we have one. If we can't afford it, how much money and how many times? And what if you give the kid back? No.
Yeah, you can't. It's forever now. Forever.
No, give them away, right?
Sorry, you can give them away. Technically, you can, yeah.
No one can stop you if you just leave them outside of an orphanage. Sorry, edit that out, please.
Nah.
I think your original question, Brianna, before we got down this track was like, what's your advice for other people on how they can handle this? I don't know. I'd love to know. Like, I suppose talking about it more with people will help to normalize it so it's not such a strange thing for people to hear that women aren't super keen on kids. I think actually, I think people are used to women not wanting to have kids. I think, not used to, like, that's okay if you don't want kids and don't have them. I think it's harder when you're pregnant and you don't want kids and people are like, maybe it's not harder, it's probably just different. But when you're pregnant and people are asking you about it, you're like, yeah, I don't really want kids, didn't really want kids. People can't understand why you're pregnant, or they think that there's gonna be big issues that come with it.
I mean, I would agree to an extent of, I don't think having a kid is a very light situation. And there's a part of it where I think people misinterpret not wanting to have a kid with not taking on the responsibility of having a kid. Because knowing you will be the best parent, you will be extremely responsible, you will give this child the best life that it can have, but you just don't want it. And a lot of people, because I think a lot of people want kids and they won't give the child the best life that they can, and they won't live up to the expectations of getting a good parent. And that's worse than not wanting a kid, but still understanding what it takes and what it entails to raise one.
Yeah. And I'll totally like my own kid. Do you know what I mean? I'm sure I will. I hope.
Right?
You might love
I hope.
have to like.
Yeah.
Some children are real dicks. Yeah.
Some children are hard work, and you've just been handed this dud or piece of shit child that you then got to look after the rest of your fucking natural born life. And I'd be so upset about it. I'd be really resentful.
I mean, children have personalities, right? It's not like this general sweeping, like all children are cute, all children are lovable. There are children that are super cute, super lovable, super empathetic, like really like, give a lot of love, give a lot back. And then there are children who are very hard to love, but as a parent, you can't admit that. You just have to unconditionally love them.
Yeah, I think I'd admit it. I feel like kids are a bit Stockholm syndrome-y, hey? It's just like you're forced to be around them for so long and so often that you kind of get used to their existence. I don't necessarily think that you'd otherwise necessarily associate with all your kids.
Your sister had a baby a year ago and she seemed smitten.
Yeah, but her kid is
actually
beautiful.
Cute.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing as well was there was the best meme the other day where it was like sibling friendships are weird. You spend the first 16 years of your life hating each other, and then all of a sudden wake up one morning and say, oh my God, you're not that bad. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yes.
On the topic of like hating something and then all of a sudden loving it.
Oh,
I'm gonna
got it.
edit
I
that
was
out.
like,
nah, whatever.
I was like, what's that got to do with the price of eggs?
Anyway,
Steffi, what are you going to do if you give birth to a child that doesn't stop crying for 6 months, doesn't really give much back to you ever for eternity?
I don't know. I don't know.
have another one to keep company.
I'm gonna have two, just so that I think there's a lot of benefits that come to having siblings. Part of that is that I don't have to entertain my single child all the time.
I've spoken to about my niece and nephew. There's 2 of them. They have a room full of toys and they still need to be entertained. Like, you still need to watch them play and engage with them.
They haven't been brought up appropriately.
That is not the childhood I had. I would have like with a piece of paper with a drawn on face on it, and I could play with it for an hour.
Yeah.
I don't understand kids these days.
Kids are boring. I think that's another thing I'm really not looking forward to, is that you like, to be a good parent, you have to engage and like be excited about their development. But playing with kids is so effing boring. And I do not like imaginative play. Like, we can do arts and crafts, but I don't care if you're trying to do a cartwheel and you're clearly not effing doing one. I don't want to watch you attempt one.
Look at me, look at me, look at me. And they do a little spin and you're like, great.
Steffi, were you not painting the other day, coloring in and painting the other day?
Arts and crafts, cool. Like puzzles, yep. Board games, great. But if it's just like watching you do something that you think is miraculous, which is actually a fucking nothing, and I've got to pretend that you've just done something amazing, I'm not going to, because I think then that you raise kids that think that everything they do is amazing, when actually most of what they do is fucking boring and invaluable.
I feel like most men I dated were raised like that.
So let me ask you, what would a child of value look like to you?
Not having one. They come on my chest when Kriss is finished rather than in me.
My favorite child is the one.
What was that?
My favorite child is the one I swallowed.
Exactly. Nice pearl necklace.
Yeah.
I love that thing that's like having a child is basically keeping your cum as a pet.
That is so good.
You ever just think about how many sperms were released that particular time you got impregnated, and they were all rushing to your egg, and you probably got a loser?
I imagine your parents must feel that regularly.
Yeah.
You're like, there was thousands of them and it had to be this one.
Especially that my mum had 2 abortions before me, and she probably curses to this very day why she kept me.
Do you know what's so funny though, is that imagine like for you to have made it, I think there's like millions of sperm in each ejaculation. For you to have made it, imagine how many like the other millions were duds, like more of duds. Like,
I was just having a good day.
The only good day you've ever had. It was all downhill from there.
One day.
One good day. You're a winner. You were born. You're a winner already. I think it's so everyone always thinks it's the first sperm to get there, but it's not. So many get in and start chewing in and dying. And it's the one that kind of holds back. So, exercises and everything. No.
I actually just waited for the other sperm to create a hole, and then I quickly swam through it. Literally did not
Move, bitch.
Sorry, what were we talking about?
So we're talking about how you want to have a sibling for your child, right? So they can entertain each other. How like soon after this pregnancy do you think you'll do it? Because I feel like you should just get it over and done with.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those situations where as soon as physically possible, between balancing a newborn and work and stuff, I'll probably do it just so I can get this phase of my life over.
Yeah.
Yeah. You mean this 20-year phase, right?
Isn't that just so disappointing? Does anyone else find that really upsetting?
You know what's great though? So many more people are staying at home till they're like 30. You used to be able to kick your kid out at what, 17, 18, and now they're clutching to the nest.
I know.
Yeah, what if you have a kid that wants to create a podcast and never makes any money, lives at home until they're 35?
You could have a kid that just lives in your basement forever and ever and ever.
Nah, they're playing games and they're going to be a star in some band. How would you feel if your kid did not have a sense of humor?
Yeah, that'd be tough. I think the worst kind of, imagine you had an artist.
I feel like your child is going to be raised with so many people making fun of it from birth. I feel like your child is going to be born, like from the moment he's born, he's going to be made fun of and ridiculed and harassed by everyone in your family and all your friends, that he's going to have to develop a very thick skin and a sense of humor, because if not, he will end up in some serious therapy.
Or a serial killer.
It can really only go one of two ways. No, I don't. That's another reason why I want to have siblings, though, is because I think siblings do teach each other lots of resilience, because I don't think anyone will ever tease you or bully you as much as your siblings, and that gives you a thick skin and makes you like better at coping with tough situations. They also teach you things about sharing and understanding, that even though two people come from the same background, I think it teaches you a lot about empathy, and that two people can have the same upbringing, be completely different. But I think we were brought up with lots of the same kind of teasing and funny, light teasing and stuff that made us resilient but also funny people, which I think is good.
From what I've heard, I wouldn't quite say it was light teasing.
Well,
I feel like there might have been a hierarchy in your sisterhoods.
But again, it's one of those things where everyone grew up in the same household but had different experiences, which teaches you a lot.
Do you think this pressure to have children is changing across generations? Like, do you think your mum and your grandma and your great grandma even thought thoroughly about it, or it was just a natural progression, and now we've got into an era where we actually can critically evaluate, do or do we not want kids?
I definitely think that we have a lot more choice these days in whether or not we want kids. I know, for example, my grandma, she fell pregnant by chance and not by desire. And that's because she said, the way that she phrases it is, back in those days, if your husband wanted to have sex, you didn't have any say. And if you didn't have time to get a condom, it's just the way it was. And so she fell pregnant when she was 20. She didn't want to be pregnant. She didn't want to have kids. She actually tried to give herself abortions, she tells us, or she tried to, not abortions, but she tried to do all the wife-taily kind of stuff that would lead to a miscarriage.
That would explain your mum.
So I know she didn't have a choice in the matter. But I know that now she says that having kids was the greatest thing she ever did. But interestingly, she is one of the people who, before I got pregnant and said I didn't want to have kids, she probably responded the most negatively and called me extremely selfish for not wanting to have kids. But I feel
Thanks,
like,
Grammy.
which I was surprised about, because she didn't want to have kids either, and she fell into it, whereas we definitely have the choice as to whether or not we want to.
But knowing your grandmother, I think it's one of those things that her family is the thing she values the most these days.
Yeah, like if you think about your grandma's life, like how much more fulfilling is it because of her children and her grandkids and her nieces and nephews? What would she do with her days if it was just her and her partner? What she gives so much to you and your sisters. Like it's part of her life and identity, raising you girls.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say because she's 81 now. So for like the last 60 years of her life, she's been a mother and or grandmother. So I think I don't know, I suppose she'd travel the world. She'd probably have a lot more fun, be at a lot more parties, whatever 81-year-olds do.
getting on the rack and living it up.
No, it's hard to say, but it was just a very interesting comment for her to make.
Yeah.
Selfishness, that's a very old school mentality when you're thinking in terms of literally reproducing to maintain humanity, and we are so beyond that. We need people to stop breeding. Like, thinking that not having a child is selfish is, I haven't heard that in like 100 years.
But why selfish as well? Should you be selfless towards if it was the other way around?
And in my opinion, having kids is more selfish. I mean, what else are you having kids for? I don't think people have kids these days to expand humanity. I don't think that's their intent. People just want an extension of themselves, which is a very narcissistic thing to do, which I think is more selfish. And then people with kids are extremely selfish. I don't know if you've hung out with people who have kids, but everything like then revolves around what their kid can do and is capable of, or their nap time, or where they're safe to travel to, or any like what activity their kid is in the mood for that day. I don't see how not having kids is more selfish than having kids.
And Steffi, you and I were talking about this, how some people have no social media presence, and then as soon as they have a child, their entire social media is flooded.
That was very much like Steffi's sister, who was always against mothers posting about their kids online. And then as soon as her own baby was born, we actually had to have an intervention with her about not posting so much because she was becoming too basic.
Why? Like, do they just so fall in love that they think the world wants to see?
I think they find their kids so cute that they want to share it with the world. Like, they're proud of their creation and they want everyone to see it. I know a few people who have become like that, but it's mainly like people I forget who I'm friends with all of a sudden will pop up on social media with baby photos, and then I'm seeing them all the time and I'm like, I totally forgot you existed, but you've got a kid now, so here you are.
Do you think Facebook has algorithms though that as soon as somebody gets engaged or married or has a kid, it actually puts it onto more people's feeds?
Probably.
Well, you know what? Thank you so much. I think we have covered a topic that is really necessary to talk about. And I don't think you're alone in your views. I think a lot more people feel that than they wish to admit. So thank you for sharing. And if there was anybody out there who may want to get in contact with you just to debrief on their own situation, would you be happy for them to contact you? And if so, where can they find you?
If they want to, they can, like, if they get in touch with you guys, you can pass my details across. I'd love to know if, I mean, do you know what, actually, something that's very surprising is there have been 3 people who I've told about this who were very similar to me before having their own kids, and they didn't want kids. They weren't interested, just wanted to like work and travel and enjoy their lives. And actually, having spoken about it to those people, it was nice to know that there are other people out there who feel the same, and their kids are older now. Some of them are through uni, some of them are teenagers. And that's always nice. So I suppose even if other people who listen to this have had similar experiences and they'd want to share what it was like for them before and after, I'd also be keen to hear like how they went with it all.
I just want to know those people that had similar experiences and now they've got kids that are through uni and stuff like that. Was it worth it in the end?
Yeah, so for 2 of them, yes. The other one, her kids are still at school actually, and she's very honest about the fact that she's gone back to work full time because some parents just kind of do the part-time thing for a bit. But she went back to school full time, and she was like, look, I'm not a really kiddie person. I'm not a fun person. She's actually got a young daughter who's about 3 or something. She's like, there's no point me doing the part-time thing because it's neither of us are enjoying ourselves the most we could be, because I don't particularly enjoy playing with kids all day, and my daughter would have so much more enrichment going to childcare and daycare centers. And that's kind of nice to hear that she wasn't super keen, and then she still gets to do the things that she loves with work, and she doesn't feel guilt or shame around it. She's like, I don't feel like my life's unbalanced. I know a lot of women find that when they're at work, they feel like they should be with their kids, and when they're with their kids, they feel like they should be at work. She's like, but I don't. I feel like I should be at work and my kids should be at daycare, and I spend time with them on the weekend, and that's how she reconciles it, and she makes the most of both worlds. And I feel like that resonates a lot, and I would probably fall into that camp. And I like that she doesn't feel guilt around it or shame, and that she's just like, yeah, that's just what's best for both of us. And I wish more people could talk like that and understand that. And the other two who have the older kids, one of them's like, yeah, my kids are great now, the ones who's through uni, and the other one who's got teenagers.
They're great now. What were they like before?
She didn't want any and ended up having 4.
Odd.
But she then wanted 2, hubby wanted 3, 4th one was an accident. But she's very funny and honest about it, and she's not hugely over the top maternal or cuddly and stuff like that. She's still just a very cool, funny person. So it's nice to see that you can still be yourself even through all the stages of having kids grow up and not feel like your life's being completely ruined by them. Like, that's nice. Yeah, I think they would say it's been worth it. Or the one who's got the teenagers, actually, she said, look, you do have to give up a lot of the things you would have otherwise enjoyed, and your life does change a lot and it becomes different. She's like, it's still good though, it's just very different. And she's like, but I felt the same, like she's like, I used to do things that I can't do anymore and couldn't do because of kids. And she's like, so it does change, but it's still been good.
Yeah. So I guess there is that hope. It'll be interesting to see how you are in a year and a couple of years and 20 years down the track, and to have such an honest opinion of, if it was worth it. Because I think similarly to how a lot of people, I mean, it's one of those things, you don't know what you're missing out on, or how good it could be without the other side, or without not have had kids, and if you think that it would have been better off that way or not. So I think as long as you can still find happiness in what you do, then it's okay. But
I'll compare it to this. Like, I adopted a dog a year ago, who I thought was going to be very different to how she ended up being, because I wasn't given a proper history of her. And she has been the hardest work I've ever had in a pet. I love her to bits and pieces, and I appreciate the positive things in her. But do I feel like life would have been easier without her? Absolutely. Like, I can still see that. Like, even though I do love her and I enjoy the good things about her, I'm not, what's the word? Like, I can still see that my life probably would have been a lot easier, and I would have been able to do a lot more and enjoy a lot more different things if I didn't have her around.
And if you could make the decision again, would you have taken on this journey with her if you knew that it would be like this?
No. And that's the moral of the story.
But again, had this dog for a year, right? And it takes quite a few years for children's redeeming qualities to come through. It's the long run with children. It's not after a year, you probably still will be feeling like this is really, really tough. But a few years on, that's when it becomes worth it.
I mean, you have to think about the training side. Dogs, you can train over a few weeks to do something. Kids take at least 13 years.
Yeah, I think the thing is, like, even though I can see that my life would have been different and there would have been a lot of other things I would have enjoyed, like if I didn't have kids, I'm sure there will be things that I'll enjoy about my own kids. I don't think I'll like many other kids though. I think I'll just be one of those people that enjoy my own kids.
Can't you wait for the parks, where you take your kid to the park and you have to talk to all the other kids and parents, and for the kid parties and have 30 kids in your backyard?
I don't know about you guys. I don't think this will change even when I've had a kid. I'm not having a baby shower because one of the biggest reasons why I don't want them is because I do not care about other people's kids and cannot be bothered to listen to parents talking only about their kids. I find it one of the most boring topics ever.
If you do have a birthday party for your son, though, I expect there to be alcohol.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, there will be. But does anyone else find it really boring when people just talk about their kids?
I would prefer you to show me pictures of your dog than your child.
Agreed.
That I think is cute. And I want to hear all the stories and what they got up to with their little, doggy friends at the park. But I don't care about your child.
Yeah. Yeah. Kaz?
Oh, sorry. I was just showing Kevin. Anyway.
Yeah, but I don't know. I feel like, I suppose that's another reason that, like, I feel like people become boring after kids because kids become their whole life and it's their only topic that they can talk about anymore.
Yeah, the only thing they can relate to. Well, hopefully you don't turn out like that, and I'll hold you to it. And I'll only allow you to mention your child 3 times in a day. Any more than that and you get cut off.
Yes, I obviously, if you become child obsessed, I just won't be your friend anymore. So that's how that's going.
So I guess this is goodbye, guys.
Yeah. On that note, we always finish
Have a nice
off with
life.
yeah. We always finish off with a holy trinity, and we'd like you to please share a gratitude, a brag, and a desire.
And gratitude. Something that I'm grateful for always, or just today?
Whatever comes to mind. It can be always, or just for today, or just for the last, I don't know, hour of podcast. Who knows?
This is probably going to come across bad. I love that we've got a little lockdown again. I know that a lot of people struggle, but I actually love lockdown. I love being able to work from home and just in my own space, because I really like being at home. Is that a bad
No, I
gratitude?
agree with you 100%. I've been waiting a whole year for this.
I know. I thought we'd never get the opportunity ever again.
What was it yesterday? I ended up cleaning all the carpets in the house and the couches and the upholstery. Like, you get to just do fun things in life during lockdown.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I understand a lot of people struggle, and I'm probably enjoying it so much because I don't have kids and things like that. Don't know how many of you recognized all the people who preached to have kids were very quiet last year. All the people that are like, babies are the best. I didn't hear from them until the new year, when lockdown was well and truly over.
No, you know what? Even just having a Zoom with people with kids, you see how annoying they are when they're running around in the background and you can't control them and they don't stay in their room. And
yeah, but trying to work full time whilst entertaining kids or having them homeschooled, it would have been a very tough year for many. So I feel very fortunate that that wasn't my experience, and I'm enjoying this mini lockdown again. So grateful for that one. A brag, I think I'm still waiting for an actual contract, but at work I've been presented with a job description of me moving into a higher position, so a sort of promotion, right before I go on to maternity leave, so that I can return to that role. I've still got to sign the contract, but it was exciting to see the position description of what they're proposing.
congratulations.
Thanks. So what was the other thing?
Desire.
Kind of want yumcha.
Can we all go?
I really want yumcha. We were meant to have Chinese takeaway last night when Kriss's parents came over, and because they were like, let's do Chinese takeaway, and I was like, yeah, I've wanted dumplings for ages, and we've been meaning to go to yumcha with them for ages. Then lockdown happened. That's probably one of the negatives of lockdown, is no yumcha. And so they came over last night, and Dora's like, oh yeah, we actually got we got Chinese on Friday night, so we want something else tonight. And I haven't had my Chinese yet, so I really feel like dumplings or something.
Well, when everything opens up again, we can go to that RSL in Ramsgate, I think it is, and get yumcha there. It's meant to be amazing.
I'll invite
Yeah.
myself.
I'm not even being picky. Like, literally anywhere that can bring me dumplings right now, I will accept.
Amazing. All right. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks so much.
I was just going to say thanks, and I hope that, I don't know, I hope your audience doesn't find this episode too negative or upsetting.
No, I don't even think we have an audience half the time. I don't know who listens to this. No.
Thanks for listening to the Am I Adulting Good podcast. We hope you guys are getting out of it as much as we are and are learning a trick or two about how to adult. Please give us a review and a 5-star rating, like our podcast, and follow our channel on whichever streaming app you're using. It really helps us reach more people and build our community.
Hit us up on Instagram at Am I Adulting Good? Also, remember to send us your Holy Trinity and share your stories with us at amiadultinggood@gmail.com. Each week, we'll share one of our adulters' emails, and that could be you. Seriously, we love hearing from you. Keep doing your thing, adulters. We love you. We love you.
Am I adulting good?